All right, today we're talking about timing and how to use our metronome to improve our timing using exercises that we already know. First, we need to know what a metronome is. Okay, the word metronome, broken into two parts, metro, measure, nome means like regulation or something from Old Greek or whatever. So it measures things, right? It doesn't tell you what to do, it measures things. It measures time. Okay, when something is 120 BPM, beats per minute, that means that 1 minute is broken into 120 different segments, just like a foot is broken into 12 inches. That's all it does. Then we have to use that information to be able to play in time. Okay? So to do that, we have a couple terms that we want to talk about. When we are using a metronome or we're listening or playing with other people, we want to know the difference between a cue and a checkpoint. So a cue happens when one thing happens and then what you do happens after it. If you're playing tambourine, the triangle plays and then you play on the next beat. So you wait, you hear the triangle, and you can come in. A checkpoint is where two things happen at the same time. So the triangle and the tambourine would both happen on the same beat. Okay, so if they happen together, then you know it's right. But you can't wait for it to happen. You and the triangle player both have to count. And then if you both hit at the same time, you know everything's fine. If you don't hit at the same time, one of you is wrong, or maybe both, right? When we use a metronome, we know which one of us is wrong, right? We're wrong. The metronome's right because it is measuring the time. That's exactly what we get it for, okay? So when we learn how to use a metronome for better timing, really what we're doing is we're going to change the amount and timing of our checkpoints so we're required to do more of the thinking, okay? For everything that we do, we're going to use the tempo metronome from Frozen Ape because I think it's really easy to do with this stuff. So that's what I'll be using to demonstrate all of this. So the first thing we need to do is learn the exercise that we're going to play. It's 2 bars long. It's going to be a measure of 16th notes and a measure of E's and U's, or basically all the lefts. 1, 2, ready, go. We're using this exercise because it relies on our rebound. It's a flow exercise where our left hand continues bouncing the whole time. That rebound is just going to make it a little bit easier to deal with. Okay, so right now we've got one checkpoint per beat, kind of our standard way to do it. A lot of music has that, bass drums on a march, or almost anything on the radio is going to have something driving home a quarter note. But we know that when we have more space between the checkpoints, it's harder on us. And when we make things harder on ourselves, more challenging for ourselves, we create a desirable difficulty, and that is what's going to make us better. So when I take away checkpoints and I have to work harder, I'm going to improve. If you find something challenging, that challenge is how much better you're going to get once you figure it out. So the first thing we'll do is we'll use this metronome, and we'll turn off beats 2 and 4. So we're just going to have a click on beats 1 and 3. Now, whenever I do this, I'm going to use the light to cheat when I count off, just to make it a little bit easier on everybody. Here we go. And 1, 2, ready, go. Same exercise, but way more challenging because I have fewer checkpoints. Okay? We can use the same idea and use 2 and 4, so I'll just switch it over to 2 and 4 here. 1, 2, ready, go. Now when we do that, we have to keep counting until beat 2 so we know that we actually lined up at the right place. We can do any combination we want. Let's do just beat 1. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, everything works. Okay, now another thing I like to do is I like to put the metronome in a grouping that's not the same as my time signature. So I'm in 4/4, so I'm going to switch my metronome to 3/4 and have it only click beat 1. So that means I'm going to hear a click on beat 1, then beat 4, then beat 3, and then if we kept going, beat 2, and then 1 again. Okay, so we have to count off in 3, by the way, to make this work if we want to start on 1. 2, 3, 1, ready, go. Okay, You could do groups of 5. It doesn't really matter. Anything you can come up with is a good idea. You can also change the time signature of the exercise, make it in 3/4, 2/4, or whatever. Another thing I like to do is just extend the E's and U's, make the E's and U's last longer. Okay? So, like, let's add another measure while I have the 3 on. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, go. Right? And that line's back up on 1 just because of the way the math works there. And we have a couple other ways we can use our metronome as well. So I'm going to switch this to 1/4, and I'm going to actually use this as my upbeat. Okay? So to do that, you kind of need to know how fast you're going. And what we're going to do is listen to it for a second, get my tempo, so I know I'm here, and then I'm going to push play on the upbeat, so it's a little easier for me to find it. And 1, and 2, and ready, go. Okay, so I've made it a little easier for myself by the way I counted it off, but you don't have to do that if you want to make it more challenging, which is always okay. You can do E's and U's, things like that as well. Now another thing I like to do, and we're going to do now, is I'm going to turn this metronome way down. Okay, like the volume. So it's very quiet. So this works really well because when I'm playing, I can probably cover it up. But when there's rests, like in the second measure, we should be able to hear it in between. Let's see how that works. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Hopefully you can hear that. So what I like to do is turn it really quiet, and then I only hear it in the spaces. Now that only works with an articulate pad like this. If you're using a real snare drum or something, it might ring too much and cover it up even if you're not exactly right. Okay? So when you're doing this and doing any of these tricks, remember that for most people, the first thing that happens is it doesn't work. It feels very difficult because you're challenging yourself in a new way. And like I said earlier, that challenge is what makes you better. However hard each variation is for you is how much better you get when you figure it out. So there's no bad variations. Any groupings work, however many beats you want to have on. Just beat 3, just beat 2. Have it click once every 5 beats while you're in 4/4. They all work. Use any of them, use all of them. Just make sure that you're doing variations. What we don't want is to play the same one over and over and over again. You get really good at it and you keep repeating it. You stop getting better at that point. You're just playing something you know instead of working on something you need to get better at. So if you've played it 30 times the same way and you're nailing it every time, don't do that anymore. Pick a different variation and use that one instead. Okay? So that's a lot of stuff to practice, right? If we take that 1, 2 measure exercise, change the time signature, change the number of repeats, change our metronome, we have thousands of things we can practice. Okay? So I like exercises like this because you never run out of things to do. You can always keep improving. So take this exercise and get going. There's a lot of stuff to get through.